have a problem seeing.
Lebanese-Nigerian businessman Sir Gilbert Chagoury.
In 2004, the chairman of Nigeria's anti-corruption agency sets a trap. He's been building a case for months against a man he believes is at the center of one of the largest financial crimes in Nigerian history. The plan is to lure this man to a remote airstrip and arrest him the moment he steps off his private jet. The officers are in position. The indictment is ready. The plane touches down. And then someone tips off the pilot by radio. The engines roar back to life. The plane accelerates down the runway and lifts off, leaving Nigerian airspace entirely. The man on that plane was named Gilbert Chagoury. But who is this man, and how has he managed to build one of the largest portfolios of government infrastructure contracts of any private citizen in Nigeria? High in the mountains of northern Lebanon, there is a village called Miziara, population about 15,000, Maronite Catholic, remote, and for 9 months of the year, almost empty, because the working age residents of Miziara are somewhere else. They are in Nigeria, working for one family. That family is the Chagourys. Gilbert Rames Chagoury was born in Lagos on the 8th of January 1946. His parents, Rames and Alice, were Lebanese immigrants who had settled in Nigeria in the 1930s. Gilbert was sent to Lebanon for school, came back to Nigeria as a teenager and started working in sales. Cars first, then floor milling with his father-in-law. And in 1971, at 25 years old, he and his younger brother Ronald founded the Chagoury Group. Construction, real estate, floor mills, hotels is a lengthy list. Over the next 2 decades, the Chagoury Group became one of the biggest conglomerates in Nigeria, with approximately 20,000 employees by the company's own account. A business empire built in the country his parents chose as home. His supporters call him a builder, a visionary, a man who bet on Nigeria when others left. But there's a dark side to the emergence of this empire. On a flight to the oil-rich city of Port Harcourt, Gilbert Chagoury sat down next to a military officer named Sani Abacha. They talked, and then they became friends. That friendship would shape Nigeria in so many ways. In November 1993, Abacha dissolved Nigeria's democratic institutions. He cancelled a presidential election and installed himself as head of state. He would rule for 5 years, and in that time, an estimated $2 to $5 billion would vanish from the national treasury, hidden in banks across Switzerland, Luxembourg, Liechtenstein, and the Isle of Jersey. Gilbert Chagoury didn't just know Abacha during those years, he became indispensable to him. Philippe Vasset, the longtime editor of Africa Energy Intelligence in Paris, a man who tracked the intersection of oil, money, and African politics for decades, he described Chagoury's role in a single sentence, quote, "He was the gatekeeper to Abacha's presidency." And to understand what that gatekeeper does, we need to go inside this one room. Now, imagine you are Bill Richardson, a US congressman. President Clinton has sent you to Nigeria to pressure Abacha on human rights. You've just spent hours across the table from one of the most feared men in Africa. Abacha doesn't blink. He doesn't concede. You walk out exhausted. And then your handlers take you somewhere else, a private home. There's a man waiting. You've never heard of him. He's not a government official. He holds no title. And then he offers you pizza. You sit with him for an hour and a half. He's charming. He's knowledgeable. He seems sympathetic to Washington's concerns about the regime in Nigeria. So you leave thinking you've made a useful contact. But what you don't know is that the man sitting across from him is the gatekeeper of the regime he just came to pressure. That man was Gilbert Chagoury. But it went deeper than just deal making. Abacha's regime was allegedly looting the Central Bank of Nigeria. Billions of dollars moved to personal accounts across Europe. And Chagoury helped make that movement possible. His own Swiss lawyer, a man named Luc Agard, confirmed to PBS that Chagoury served as a reference for Abacha's sons at Credit Suisse. When the sons of the military dictator walked into one of the world's most prestigious banks with unexplained millions, the bank needed a credible name to vouch for them. Gilbert Chagoury was that name. And at another Geneva bank, SG Ruig, accounts were set up that facilitated transfers of over $120 million directly from the Central Bank of Nigeria to entities linked to the Abacha family. Nigeria's future anti-corruption chief Nuhu Ribadu would later put it bluntly, saying, quote, "You couldn't investigate corruption without looking at Chagoury." In 1997, a Nigerian news magazine called The News tried to expose the Chagoury family's grip on the country. The journalist was later arrested, tortured, and nearly died in detention. And then, on the 8th of June 1998, Sani Abacha died. According to a declassified US State Department memo, on the day Abacha died, Chagoury placed a call from his private plane to the American Embassy in Nigeria. He said he was in contact with the Provisional Ruling Council and he asked the question, what kind of government would be acceptable to US officials? Abacha was dead. His regime was collapsing. Every person who had been close to him was about to face consequences. Frozen accounts, investigations, prosecution even. But Gilbert Chagoury had made a career out of surviving transitions. 2 years after Abacha's death, a Geneva court convicted Gilbert Chagoury of money laundering and aiding a criminal organization. The evidence was specific. Chagoury had helped set up accounts at SG Ruig Bank that enabled transfers of over $120 million from Nigeria's central bank to Abacha family entities. The verdict was handed down and then the negotiation began. Chagoury's lawyers offered a deal. He would pay a fine, 1 million Swiss francs, about $600,000. He would return $66 million to the Nigerian government. Swiss authorities agreed to expunge the conviction from his records after 2 years. Chagoury has maintained that he did not know the funds were stolen. And separately, he negotiated with the new civilian government in Nigeria. He would return money he held in Swiss bank accounts. The exact amount has never been confirmed, with some reports placing it as high as $300 million. And in exchange, Nigeria would grant him immunity from prosecution. Chagoury had escaped prosecution. His conviction was erased. He had immunity, but there was one man in Nigeria who was not ready to let Chagoury walk away. Nuhu Ribadu had become chairman of Nigeria's Economic and Financial Crimes Commission in 2003, the country's first real attempt at an anti-corruption agency. He was aggressive, public feared. He went after governors, senators, bank chiefs, and he hadn't forgotten Gilbert Chagoury. Ribadu knew the Swiss conviction had been expunged. He knew the Nigerian indemnity deal protected Chagoury from the Abacha-era charges. And so, he found a different path. Minor business violations, enough for an arrest warrant, enough to get Chagoury on Nigerian soil. And once he was in custody, the EFCC would build the bigger case. The trap is set at a remote airfield in the far northeastern corner of the country. EFCC officers are in position. The jet descends. The wheels touch tarmac. The engines begin to idle. And then a radio transmission. Someone at the airport tips off the pilot. The engines roar back to life again. The plane accelerates, lifts off, climbs and disappears. Gilbert Chagoury never touched the ground. In 2007, when Ribadu's political protection vanished, he was pushed out of the EFCC. In 2008, gunmen opened fire on his car. He survived and then he fled Nigeria. The man who chased Chagoury across an airstrip was the one who ended up running. Chagoury was entering a new phase. He had escaped Swiss courts. He had outrun Nigeria's best investigator. He had paid enough money to buy freedom from the country he had been convicted of helping to loot. But there was a problem. His reputation was in ruins. Money alone couldn't fix that. He needed something far more valuable. He needed legitimacy, and he knew exactly where to find it. Now, the thing about Gilbert Chagri is, he didn't go to Washington after the Abacha regime collapsed. He went during it. Remember that pizza meeting? Bill Richardson, the US envoy, sitting in Chagri's Lagos home in August 1996? Yeah, that visit happened while Abacha was still in power. A few weeks after that dinner, Chagri made a donation, $460,000, to a group called Vote Now 96, a tax-exempt voter registration organization with close ties to the Democratic National Committee. Now, Chagri was a foreign national. Under US law, he was explicitly prohibited from contributing to American political groups. But the money went through, and the timing is critical. This is 1996. Abacha is in power. Chagri is serving as his financial gatekeeper. Just months earlier, the regime had executed writer and activist Ken Saro-Wiwa and 8 others, a killing that provoked international outrage and Nigeria's suspension from the Commonwealth. Moshood Abiola, the man widely believed to have won the presidential election Abacha had cancelled, was rotting in a prison cell. His wife Kudirat had been assassinated on the streets of Lagos that same year. But while Saro-Wiwa's body was barely cold and Abiola sat in a cell, Chagri was writing checks in Washington. A few months after the donation, Gilbert Chagri and his family were guests at President Clinton's White House holiday dinner for top Democratic Party supporters. So, while the US was publicly attacking and blocking Abacha every step of the way, his man was having dinner in the White House. Over the next decade, the relationship deepened. Chagri arranged a $100,000 speaking fee for Bill Clinton at a Caribbean event. He attended Clinton's 60th birthday celebration. He gave between $1 million and $5 million to the Clinton Foundation. This was disclosed in December 2008, the same month that Barack Obama announced Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. And in 2009, the Chagri Group pledged $1 billion to the Clinton Global Initiative for a project in Lagos. That project is called Echo Atlantic. April 2009, Doug Band, head of the Clinton Global Initiative, Bill Clinton's personal aide, sends an email to 2 of Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's closest advisors, Homer Aberdeen and Cherry Mills. The email read, quote, "We need Gilbert Chagri to speak to the substance persons in Lebanon. As you know, he is key guy there and to us. Very important." Aberdeen replies, "It's Jeff Feltman. I'm sure he knows him. I'll talk to Jeff." Band pushes back minutes later. "Better if you call him now, preferable. This is very important. He is awake, I'm sure." Chagri is being treated as a priority contact by the US Secretary of State's inner circle, but not through official diplomatic channels. These emails were obtained through a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit and released in August 2016. But Chagri didn't stop at Democrats. You see, between 2012 and 2016, he routed approximately $180,000 through Americans who made campaign contributions in their own names using his money. These are called straw donors. These donations were made to the campaigns of 4 Republican candidates. One of them, Congressman Jeff Fortenberry. He was later convicted of lying to investigators about where the money came from. That conviction was eventually overturned on procedural grounds, but the underlying facts of the straw donor scheme were never disputed. Chagri signed a deferred prosecution agreement with the Department of Justice and paid $1.8 million. No prison, no trial. This is the American version of the Swiss expungement. But the most important door Chagri ever opened wasn't in Washington or Geneva. It was in Lagos, on a beach that used to house thousands of people. One morning in 2008, state officers arrived at a beach on the edge of Victoria Island, Lagos. They bring tear gas. They set homes on fire. In the chaos, people run. Some run inland, some run toward the water. Some of the people who run toward the water don't come back. there is no warning, no court order, there is no record of compensation, no documented resettlement plan. By the end of the day, an estimated 80,000 people have lost their homes. The place was called Bar Beach, and it had been there as long as colonial Lagos. Petty traders, cleaners, waiters, families who worked in service on the wealthy Victoria Island next door and built their lives on stilts above the water. The ocean had always been a threat. Coastal erosion ate land year after year, and the tides could be violent, but the community had adapted. They had been adapting for generations. So what changed? Why 2008? Well, because in 2005, the governor of Lagos had written to President Obasanjo proposing a, quote, permanent solution to the Bar Beach problem. The solution wasn't flood defenses for the people who lived there. It was a private investor who would reclaim the lost land, build a new seawall, and construct an entirely new city on top of it. On the 7th of July 2006, the Lagos State government granted a statutory right of occupancy to South Energy X Nigeria Limited, a subsidiary of the Chagri Group. 10 million square meters of Lagos coastline, a 78-year lease. 2 years later, the people who lived on that coastline were cleared with tear gas and fire. The name of the governor who signed that grant, handing over 10 million square meters to Gilbert Chagri, is Bola Ahmed Tinubu. In May 2023, the man who had granted Chagri 10 million square meters of Lagos coastline became the president of Nigeria. The Tinubu-Chagri relationship, which had begun during Tinubu's governorship in 1999 and produced the Eco Atlantic Land Grant in 2006, entered a new phase. At the COP28 Climate Summit in Dubai in late 2023, Chagri appeared on the official Nigerian delegation list. His title wasn't businessman or advisor, it was something confidant of Mr. President. His listed organization was the Nigerian State House. No other country at the summit listed a confidant on its delegation. In January 2024, Tinubu issued a birthday tribute from the State House saying, quote, with friends like him, one can sleep with a still mind. And then came the contracts. The Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway, 700 kilometers, 10 lanes, awarded to High-Tech Construction, a Chagri subsidiary. Estimated cost 15 trillion naira, roughly 11 to 13 billion dollars. The single most expensive infrastructure project in Nigerian history. More than half the country's annual budget. But there was no public competitive bidding. And then there's the Tinkan and Apapa ports awarded to ITB Nigeria, another Chagri subsidiary, for rehabilitation, 1.1 to 1.4 trillion naira, financed by £746 million in UK export finance deals sealed during Tinubu's state visit to London. Chagri is said to have travelled with the delegation. African Intelligence reported that ITB was selected despite the group's lack of experience in the port sector. There is also the Snake Island Port Container Terminal. This was awarded in March 2026 for $1 billion. But the contracts are only half the picture. Leaked documents obtained by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists reveal that President Tinubu's son, Sheyi, was a majority shareholder in an offshore company alongside Ronald Chagri Jr. The company was incorporated in the British Virgin Islands, a jurisdiction chosen specifically for corporate secrecy. Its business purpose has never been disclosed. Its current ownership is unknown. Separately, Sheyi Tinubu sits on the board of CDK Integrated Industries, a Chagri-owned company. And then, on the 8th of January 2026, his 80th birthday, Gilbert Chagri received the Grand Commander of the Order of the Niger, GCON, Nigeria's second highest national honor, the same rank given to vice presidents, senate presidents, and chief justices. There was no official ceremony, no official citation explaining why a man once convicted of laundering stolen money, who sets up bank accounts for a dictator's sons, who ran illegal donations to American politicians, was receiving one of the highest honors the Nigerian state can bestow. The award became public 11 days later, when billionaire Femi Otedola posted the certificate on X, presidency sources confirmed it was authentic. Gilbert Chagri has outlasted 7 Nigerian heads of state. Abacha, he was intimate. With Abdulsalami, he was unchallenged. With Obasanjo, he was indemnified. Yaradua, rehabilitated. Jonathan, he was favored. Buhari, he was sidelined. And for Tinubu, well, you can decide. No elected official has maintained influence across that many administrations. No military commander, not even an appointed minister. Only Chagri, the man with no title, no office, no constituency. He has survived every transition. Nuhu Ribadu, the man who said, quote, "You couldn't investigate corruption without looking at Chagri," is today President Tinubu's national security advisor. He serves in the same government that gave Gilbert Chagri the second highest national honor in the land.